Hello, hello. Uh, Hello, everyone. It's a Kochi evening, and Kochi is a colorful place, and we witnessed to a very colorful start, and we have had some excellent sessions around, the need for cybersecurity, what all you can do. I think Nitin was great in his presentation. It was a wonderfully engaging and a very participative session. So coming after that, I think it is necessary that before we delve into this fireside chat, we lay down a little context, which is very important for a conference of this nature and size. So the first question which comes to us is, why cybersecurity? Why are we having so many activities, so many conferences, seminars, brainstorming sessions around cybersecurity? What is the need? Well, to give you some statistics, it has been projected that, cybersecurity is the third largest economy of the world after the USA and China, and it's pegged at $8 trillion. So it's no mean numbers that we are talking about, and it is in that context that we have to see this conference. And of course, we all know about how the threat landscape has evolved, and which is going to happen as we move forward, as the technologies become more and more complex and sophisticated, as and when we encounter unprecedented circumstances. For example, the pandemic period gave a very strong push and a trigger for digital adoption and adoption of technologies. Now, whenever mankind would encounter such situations, I think it is going to lead to an increasingly greater amount of digitalization, which again is leading to a lot of complexity in the technology environment that we deal with, plus the fact that the people, the attackers, they are getting more and more sophisticated, and let me tell you, they are all very, very smart ones. My friends from the industry tell me that, before we get to some product or a solution, the antidote is already there with the hackers, and they are making full use of it. So it is in that context, that we have to see this fireside chat, and welcome to the discussion, Pawan and Sijesh. So, really starting with Sijesh. Sijesh, how do you see the threat landscape evolving? Because that is something that we are really very bothered about, and something that is the cornerstone of a conference of this nature.
All right, thanks, Mobile. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Indeed, a pleasure having you all here this evening once again. So talking about the threat landscape, right, without taking the risk of sounding repetitive, we all know that the threat landscape is ever evolving and changing, right? At Mandiant, we have a unique vantage point in this space because we probably have a ringside view of the attacker. Two of the specific practices or offerings that we have within Mandiant gives us that view of the attacker. The first and foremost offering that we have is from an incident response perspective, right? So this is essentially where a customer calls up Mandiant, it's a distress call, there is either a ransomware attack or some large-scale breach has happened, right? So in that space, if you look at the sheer level of engagement that we have, right? 1,000+ engagements in a year, 200,000 hours of incident response that we do every year. Now that in itself is an area where we earn our stars, because every time an incident responder walks into a customer environment, he's probably privy to a whole lot of information which doesn't openly get discussed. Information regarding, what are the latest tactics, techniques, and procedures being used by the attacker, right? How did the attacker get in? How did he establish the foothold? How did he laterally move? How did he gain access to the data? What was the modus operandi, right? How did he exfiltrate data out of the organization and stuff like that? Similarly, the other practice that we have is, or the other offering that we have is in the area of threat intelligence, where we track adversaries, right? So when I say we track adversaries, we basically slice and dice their activity, what industry verticals that they are targeting, what geographical location they operate out of, their tactics, techniques, and procedures, and the advanced tools that they use. right? So coming back to the query that you asked me, Mukbil, about the trends in cybersecurity, majority of the trends what we see have over the few years have more or less been the same, but I just want to particularly talk about those two particular trends, right? First and foremost is in the space of ransomware. Now, ransomware is not a new thing. We have all been aware of or heard of ransomwares in the past, but the ransomwares that we know of is more of the likes of WannaCry, right, or NotPetya, or Bad Rabbit, which were all traditional ransomwares, wherein they would affect the endpoint or they would infect the endpoint and encrypt data. And then there is a ransom demand. You need to basically pay the ransom to get the decryption keys, right? What we are seeing today is basically a completely different strain or class of ransomwares, what we typically classify under as post-compromise ransomwares, right? So while the initial modus operandi of the threat actor remains the same, there is a double extortion that the threat actor is driving, right? So you have the risk of getting your data encrypted. You also have a threat actor driving an extortion by threatening that for every day that you delay in the negotiation, they have access to your sensitive data, which they are going to make public, right? So that will be one of the things that I would say ransomware. I think over the coming months, years, that's going to stay, and that's been a major cause of concern amongst most of the CXOs. The other area that we clearly see as part of our threat intelligence is the resurgence of hacktivism, right? When the Ukraine-Russia standoff happened, we saw a lot of hacktivists kind of proclaim their allegiance to either sides, and then parallel to the war on the land, we also had cyber wars happening, right? Why just Ukraine and Russia? Right here in India, last year we had a major hacktivism in the form of Dragon Force, right, which we are all aware of, right? Similarly, every time we see the political tensions between us and our neighbors kind of peak, we see that it's not uncommon for political tensions to kind of trickle into the cyber world, right? So I would pick these two. Ransomware and the resurgence of
absolutely.
hacktivism.
So, Sijesh, I'm really trying to make this discussion very contemporary, very current, and going back to what I spoke about, that every little piece of technology that gets included in the landscape increases that landscape, increases the threat surface. So today, the most talked about piece of technology that we have today is something called generative AI, the Chat GPT. In fact, I wrote an article about this as well. How do you think, and many of the industry experts that I spoke to, they said that, Chat GPT comes with enormous capabilities of regenerating code, refining it again and again till that ransomware code is able to break the lock. So how do you, in that entire perspective, on the other hand, there were people who said that, the immense potential of something like, something as revolutionary as ChatGPT can also be used to protect, to help the defenders gain the upper hand. How do you see this entire, because I really want to, make this discussion very, very current and contemporary. Any words on that?
Sure. Thanks for asking that question. And just to let you know, we at Google have what is called as BARD, right? On similar lines. So I'll probably comment more from a BARD perspective, right? Coming to this whole concept of what role artificial intelligence plays in,
generative
in
AI.
the space of cybersecurity,
correct,
right? I'm of the opinion that from a detection perspective, the detection layer, AI always helps, right? Which is where you're going to have supervised machine learning, unsupervised machine learning, feeding in a lot of logic on the basis of not having a signature, but on the basis of purely artificial intelligence have that detection capability, right? But having said that, a hands on a keyboard is something that you can never take away from security. This is where you need a blend of AI, probably for the detection, but then you definitely need a human to run that investigation. I personally feel, this is again my personal opinion, that there is no way that you can codify the human element in security, right? There always needs to be a human element.
Absolutely. So I totally agree with you, Sijesh, on that count, that at the end of the day, it's a healthy mix or a healthy synergy between the human element and the technologies that you have, which is going to really, propel us, in the foreseeable future. So on that respect, I really want to go to you, Pawan. We have talked about all this, getting complex, the threat landscape becoming more and more greater in significance and in impact. Any views that you would want to add on to before I go to more specific questions?
First and foremost, if you're relying upon ChatGPT, be wary of the legal ramifications, because it may write a new code for you. You do not know where the code has actually been copied from. And tomorrow you are going to be sued. I've recently written a book called ChatGPT and Legalities, which is up on Amazon, where I've identified these various legal issues. So new technology comes with great promise, but without understanding the legal ramifications, if you're jumping into it, think again, because you are the one who's going to be sued. You are the one who's going to face fire. So let's not be in a great amount of hurry, but always remember about the legal ramifications, because good, bad or worse, ignorance of law is no excuse in the eyes of law. And if you know the legal ramifications, you are far better prepared as an institution, as an organization, as an individual to protect yourself and your legal interests.
Wonderful comments coming from you, Pawan, as I was expecting. That's the reason I went to you. So Pawan, carrying on with this, with this discourse over legal ramifications, what do you think are the, because the CISO's position is a very tenuous, is a highly pressured job. So in all that, in that scheme of things, how do you see the criminal liability element impacting their lives?
Well, if you have diabetes, you have a friend for a lifetime. You may want to leave diabetes, diabetes will not leave you. So as CISOs, please remember from 2023, you are now going to have 2 lifelong friends. You would want to run away from these friends, but these friends will keep on chasing you. The first friend will be jail, and the second friend will be litigation. These will be the 2 paradigms that CISOs will have to be very careful of. Look at your seat behind you. You'll see fire already up there. Why? Because there is something that's dramatically happened. The Indian law has made CISOs legally responsible for something that happens on the network. You are here at the ET-CISO conference, something happening on your company, some breach takes place, who goes to jail? You go to jail. Why? Because the law wants you to go to jail. Okay, what happens? Okay, what do I do? CERT has last year, that's a computer emergency response team, has come up with these directions. 6 hours within which you come to know of a breach, you'll have to mandatorily report. You don't report, no problem. The law says the moment the 6-hour period is gone, you are deemed to have committed an offense, punishable with 1 year's imprisonment and fine. And mind you, once the offense committed, it's committed. Supreme Court says for the next 7 years, you can be prosecuted. So, a Damocles sword is going to be hanging on your heads. You can be going to jail. And now, what's the new trend? 2 new trends. Number 1, when we are suing companies, we're not just suing companies, we are suing CISOs and CIOs by name. Not as Mr. ABC CISO, but Mr. ABC. Why? Because tomorrow, he will be personally liable. Even if he wants to leave the company, he will not be able to leave the company because the company will not underwrite his legal costs. Number 1. Second is a new trend. A number of our clients have started getting notices from the government. And what is a typical notice say? It says, hey guys, your data, this data is available for sale on the darknet. This shows as a cybersecurity breach. We've looked at our database, you have not reported. Now kindly show cause why criminal action should not be taken against you. Now that's the new ground reality that's emerging. So my request to you is, your criminal liability is already on. This is thanks to the IT Act. This is thanks to the rules, specifically the IT Directions 2022, read with the IT Rules 2021. And more significantly, it's not that this is the only bad news. There's a good news also, which is that the law says I can still give you an exit route. And that exit route is, please wear a good fire suit when you are jumping in fire. And this good fire suit is having in place appropriate documentation, policies, procedures. Don't go on the Indian Jugaad school of management. When something comes, I will do Jugaad. I cannot do Jugaad. My 27 years of experience in this space tells me, the moment I do Jugaad, I forge electronic records. That gets me 7 years imprisonment and fine under section 468 of the Indian Penal Code. So never try to tamper with the records. You may try to tamper and feel temporarily in a state of relief. Actually, long term, you'll be in a huge state of problem. Number two, the law says for your company and for you as an organization, as an individual, please exercise due diligence. Now you will say, I'm a CISO attending the ETCCISO forum. Something happens in the company, why should I go to jail? Why not the CEO? Why not the MD? Well, the law is very, very clear. Any person who's responsible for the day-to-day running of affairs of the company or the management of its activities shall be deemed to have committed the offense. Now, the moment you talk of security in a company, who's your topmost man? You close your eyes, it's a CISO. Pick him up and then sue him. Send him behind bars. That's what's currently happening. So please, my request to you is get your documented due diligences in place under section 79 IT Act. You know, remember Mahabharata? In Mahabharata, during the Gita discourse, Lord Krishna gives one kind of message to Arjun. And the central message is, hey Arjun, come to my Sharan and I will protect you. The Indian IT Act has an exact same message. Hey guys, come inside my ambit, comply with my parameters, and I guarantee you two things. Number one, you can't be sent to jail. Number two, you cannot be forced to pay 1 rupee damages by way of compensation. I want you as CISOs, I want your organizations to come in that comfort zone, have your appropriate documented due diligence, and that is appropriately required to be done. A lot of companies say, I have everything. But the next time there's a knock on the door by the police or by a court of law in forms of a summon, they don't listen to your verbal stuff. They want documentation. So do you have in policies, for example, do you have reasonable security practices and procedures which are documented? I'm sure a lot of you would be ISO 27001 certified. But a majority of guys may still not be ISO 27001 certified. Law says, don't worry. Even if you're not satisfied or certified, no problem. So long as you are following substantially the parameters of ISO 27001, I take it that you are complying with laws. So there are about 36 parameters under the IT Act. Do your documented due diligence. My law firm, Pawan Duggal Associates, we do this for a large number of companies. And we get surprised. Huge brands, huge names. You would expect the creme de la creme. And you'd surprise, boss, andar to kuch nahi hai. Documentation hai nahi. Policy hai nahi. And then you quickly start building up the blocks in the organization. So my suggestion is, don't ride on your luck. The luck is going to, somewhere, going to desert us. It's your documentation that's going to be putting you in place. Save yourself from criminal liability. These new IT directives are very dangerous. Currently, it's like a Damocles sword. It's like a huge fishing net that has been put on. Anybody that gets into the fishing net becomes the catch of the day. And once you're the catch of the day, you can actually be served on the table for the next 7 years. Wait for your turn. So it's a fundamental issue. It's not to scare you. It just is to tell you, get your documented due diligences and compliance. Because the law says, if you're duly diligent in compliance, then I'm not going to go and disturb you.
All right. I think I think the the ennui, or ennui is a word from French which means the slight fatigue that you feel after lunch, that has surely been dissipated by his remarks that you are going to jail. So I would suggest, I would go back to my initial remark that technology is there to save everyone, and I'm hearing so many reports of people going to ChatGPT to do a lot of their very important documentation. Maybe it can help them do that. Of course, there are people on the panel here as well who can do that. So it's a wonderful, wonderful discussion that we have had. Last words to you, Sijesh, on the challenges that there are, and briefly how enterprises could overcome, how the entire cyber crime landscape is becoming very, very complicated.
Yeah, so I'll give you two perspectives very quickly. I know we are running out of time. One is from an enterprise perspective, right? and the other is from a consumer perspective, because we are now Google. We also have visibility to cyber crimes that are being perpetrated on consumers, the end users like you and me, right? So this is where, with the rapid digitization, on the enterprise side, if you see the risks, with business applications moving onto the cloud, the workforce, the mobile workforce increasing, IT sprawl is a major challenge. Discovery of the digital assets, where they are, what are the misconfigurations, vulnerabilities, that's a major challenge that most enterprises are up against. On the consumer side, we are seeing people increasingly getting scammed on messenger, social media platforms, through matrimony sites, right? Unlikely place, but people are getting scammed there through gaming platforms, right? So that's probably, I know we are running out of time.
Yes,
so
yes,
just wanted to
absolutely.
quickly, yeah.
Pawan, 10 seconds to you.
What do you want to say?
Parting question.
My parting question is, take care of your back. Nobody's going to take care of your back, not your organization. Protect yourself, protect your organization, get your documented due diligence done. Because the Indian IT law is a special law, it prevails over anything inconsistent therewith contained in any law. Don't try to ride your luck too much, because we found you leave behind traces. You may leave today organization, you find the CISO of Uber gets to jail 6 years after he loses his job. Why? Because he did not report. So just do mandatory compliances, just be on the right side of the law and try as far as possible to protect yourself. That's the best way. Take your good chhata, a good umbrella when you're going out in rain. It's going to reasonably protect you that you don't get wet. Thank you.
Absolutely, and I think we are also riding on our luck because the buzzer has been struck more than twice. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us for this lovely, lovely discussion. It has been very, very insightful, and I'm sure the delegates here had a lot to take away from this. Thank you.